Hey, howdy, hi. What's up? Now, this is going to be kind of tough to explain because I'm sure, like any other art video that you've ever seen in your entire life, yes, this is my way. If you know a better way, awesome. If you have zero idea how the heck to use Clip Studio Paint, or you just want to see how anybody else does it, well then, this is my way, and I hope it helps and you're enlightened and you walk away from this video learning something new and you are more smart and your life is good. As you can see here, there is a panel here. I already have everything drawn out. This is actually a panel from a manga I'm working on called NEFFIE. Now, this is just one panel out of frighteningly many. I don't expect you guys to do this, but I am going to show you how I got to this point. So as you can see here, I just have a character sketched out, and there's a couple of things that I want to mention. The first one is that there's a line art and shading, and you'll see that there are red lines and green lines. This is kind of something that I picked up with animation, but I'm actually going to be using those as guidelines for the shading. Red is pretty much a visual indicator for what's going to be shaded, and green is an indicator for what is going to be a highlight. So before I actually get to this, I'm gonna show you with another illustration how I got to this point. So this is the one we're going to be working with, but over here is how I'm going to show you how I set it up. So, like I said, like every other drawing, you're probably going to start with the sketch. Mine are messy, so, you know, sketch at your own leisure. And then here is the line art. And the two main things that you're going to need to focus on is just having these separate. Now, a nice thing that you can actually do in Clip Studio Paint is mess with layers, like you'll see over here. And there's two particular things that I want to show you guys. The first one is here, which is locking a transparent pixel, which you'll see here. That pretty much means any information that you added to this layer, you can actually lock and affect individually. And instead of trying to explain in depth what the heck that means, I'm just going to show you. I'm going to hit that button and make sure it works, and say for whatever reason I want my sketch to be red now. Blap, no problem, it's red. And or I want to make it even redder. Blap, there you go. I want to make it blue, no problem. Pink, all right, we got it. So you'll see that you can actually change this. Now, the great thing about this is that it works with more than just a sketch, meaning if your character's hair is blue and you want to make it green for whatever reason, this is anime, folks, the weirder the hair color, the more main character they're probably bound to be. I'm just going to go ahead and make it gray for my own sanity's sake. Now you're going to see that I have a lot of shading and stuff figured out here. What the heck does this mean, and how does that help us? Well, I'm going to show you. There is another subtool here, which is set as draft layer. This is an awesome shortcut that you can click on. I'm just going to go ahead and unpress that one and press this one, and you'll see now it has a little pencil at the side. That's cool, but what the heck does it do? I'm going to show you. I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer. I'm going to name this one coloring because I'm creative. You'll see in this layer, if this wasn't checked in, I'm going to go over here to the paint bucket, and I'm going to go over here and mess with the settings. Refer only to editing layer is the option that this program will usually be in right at default, meaning that'll kind of just affect everything. It'll be like, all right, I want this picture to be red, but if I just want the hair to be red, I'm probably going to want to click on this one, refer other layers. What that means is it's going to pay attention to everything that every single layer is saying, so instead of coloring everything, it'll just color the outside. But you're going to see that this little chunk here is still being affected because it's reading the sketch. It won't read the sketch if it's a draft, meaning it'll ignore it. So if I want to color the hair all in one go, blap, blap, boom, there you go. It's really easy, and it's not interfering with all of that sketching. You just see it, but it's not being read by the program. If it's not checked in and you're on your red layer, you're going to be trying to fill it in and get really frustrated because your whole sketch is there, and you're like, well, crud, I hate everything. An easy fix for this, of course, is to just get rid of the sketch entirely, but if you have some important shading information on there, that might make it a pain. So I'm going to show you guys a cool little trick that you can do with this. I'm on the sketch layer, and it's set as a draft, and I can actually start into the shading, or more or less figuring out what I'm doing with it right in the sketch itself. So you'll see, like, I already have some of the shading figured out here. Maybe I want this little chunk right here to be darker, and so I can, in a way, figure out the shading before I ever get it done. But because this is going to be ignored later, I can still fill in everything hunky-dory, and it's no problem. As you can see over here, that's not that way. There are red and green lines here. Now I'm going to show you guys how the heck I did that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer, and I'm going to name it S1 for shading 1, again, as established, because I'm creative. Going to go ahead and get a red liner, and you'll just see the reason I use red is because it's visible. If you're like me, you probably wear glasses and you stare at a screen your whole life and you have zero visibility for everything. You hate yourself slightly, but you're also really blind. This is just to help you. So I'm just using the red, and I'm outlining where the shading is gonna go. And a good thing I would recommend for this is not to zoom in too close. There is a tendency when doing digital drawing is the fact that you can make it perfect. You want to get right up in there and make sure every detail is perfect. But a problem with this is if you focus too much on this and you get too concentrated and nitpicky on the details, when you zoom out, you're going to realize you have 16 different light sources and everything looks wrong and horrible, and you're going to hate yourself. So at this point, I suggest keeping the picture more or less zoomed out, and then zooming in if you really need to, but just zoom out so you can see the whole picture. You can see how the lighting works for the picture as a whole. And pretty much what I'm doing is I am making outlines for where I would want the shading to go. And then from that point, it makes it a lot easier for me. Now, if it gets a little hard to read lines like these because you lose track of everything, you can actually preview it to make sure that it's working by just filling it in. So you'll see there I missed a chunk, so I'm just gonna go ahead and find where that's straight, and then you can see I can figure everything out. And I know what you guys may be thinking,
this is great, but my drawing doesn't have blaring red murder shading in it.
And if it does, then I mean, there you go, problem solved. But for most of you, this probably won't be the case. This is where this is going to help us out again for the locking transparency. But before we get there, I'm going to show you what I do with the green. That's pretty much just to show you where I outline all of the shading. The green is going to be for highlights. I'm going to name this S2, back to being creative, and I'm going to just throw in some highlights and be like, okay, I want highlights there. And now that I've kind of set this up, and you can see here I have the line art, here I have S2 for the highlights, here I have S1 for the shading, I can get rid of the sketch. And then you're going to see that we have everything set up and all how we need it to go. Now, a good thing that you can note with this, and this is pretty much what I'm going to be doing in this other drawing, is you can change the color of these at any time. So they're not going to stay green and they're not going to stay red. But I'm going to show you how that works over here with an actual drawing that I have. So you're going to see over here I have a ton of folders, and that's just a mess that I make for myself. Fortunately, you can actually color code them by just, clicking on a layer and going up here to the little change palette color button and going crazy. It even lets you set your own colors for that. That's just kind of nice. This is set up the same as everything else. You'll see the line art, and then you'll see I have a folder here for shading. And because I hate myself, I just merged it down all into one for simplicity. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I am actually going to color all of the shading first, then the highlights, and then I'm going to add in the base colors. I know that that might seem kind of weird, but I already have the colors figured out. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to create a new layer here. I'm actually going to name this one, I don't know, hair, and I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to go back to the paint bucket, and like I said, make sure it's referring to other layers. And I'm just going to color everywhere that I outlined in red for the hair to be. And you'll see that sometimes it leaves little spots here because the program isn't perfect about automatically filling in. There's two ways to fix that. One is manually with the pen tool, and the other is actually within the paint bucket itself. If you click here on close and fill, or paint unfilled areas, that's something that should help you with that. But because I'm stubborn and I would probably forget to switch back and forth, I just use the pen. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to manually fill in everything, meaning the hair and all of the shading. This is pretty much the part that everyone's going to think is relatively the most straightforward. So I won't hold you hostage for this part. I'll just speed it up, and then I'll get back to you when I do everything. The most important part of this is to coordinate, because if I have the hair like this and then I want to color the rest of it later, if I try to fill that in, you see it overshoots it. So you'll see I have the rest of the hair and it overshoots it. An easy fix for that is to create a layer underneath it and then try to color that. Then all the lines will be the way that you want them to be. But yeah, I'll see you guys in a second when I do all of the shading, and then I'll explain how to turn these red lines back into the color that they're supposed to be. So I'll be back in a second. Now that I actually have all of the main shading and the highlights in, I'm going to just go ahead and merge them all. So you see here I have a layer for the hair, I have a layer for the skin, I have the layer for the coat, and then I have this layer over here for the highlights. Now that I actually have all of those in, I'm actually going to be selecting all of these layers and I'm going to merge them. A way that you can select multiple layers at a time is by clicking on one, holding shift, and then clicking on the other ones that you want to pick with it. So that'll just save you a lot of time. And I'm actually going to name this shading base. So you'll see that this is all of the shading right there for you. And you'll see that the red and green lines are still there. There are two ways that you can actually deal with them at this point. One is to just get rid of it altogether. You have all of your shading in where you need it, but because I like the smooth, crisp edges that I get from keeping them, I'm actually going to keep them. And you're going to see now what I can do is I'm going to lock the opacity on this, and if I pick the layer, if I pick the color of the line right next to it and I fill it in, it's just going to be a clean edge. Now, there are two ways of doing this. One is a manual way where you can just go in and make sure that everything is perfect, and a good color shortcut for selecting color is actually by holding Alt and then just tapping on the color that you want. That way you don't need to be messing with too many different color settings over here. So I just hold Alt and then I can just color around the edge of what I was working with to begin with. Or you can actually use the selection tool, and if you want to select all of the different segments all at once and then hit the little paint bucket here, it'll automatically fill them in. And if you hit on this little box over here, that actually makes it so you can have multiple selections at a time. So if it's selected on this, you can only have one at a time. It'll get rid of the one you had before it. But if you click on this one, it'll compound your selection, meaning that you can select multiple things at once. Control D to unselect everything. So that's really useful if you want to fill in a chunk of everything all at once. So say you just want to get all of the skin colored in one go, just select where all of it would be, and then once you have that, select the skin color and hit the paint bucket and you're set. Now I'm going to do the same with the hair. The only downside to this method is if you forget, you're just going to have weird red chunks of color everywhere. But the good news about it is because this is a base, you can just undo it and make sure that you have all the colors in the right place. Okay, so now that I have all of the shading and the highlights in, this drawing is looking kind of weird because there is no actual normal coloring in yet. But this is where the rest of the coloring is going to come in. So I'm going to go ahead and under the shading base, you see that I just have this here. Now this is going to be the color base. This is just where I'm going to lay in all of the normal flat colors for where everything should be. But what I'm going to do is I'm also going to create a new layer here and name this eyes, just because if I color in everything flat, then the eyes aren't going to be showing up. I'm going to make this dark gray just for visibility, so I can come back to this layer. And I'm also going to color in the mouth because these are things that I'm going to color in post. I'm going to go back to the color base, and now what I'm going to do is I'm pretty much just going to fill in the normal default colors, and you'll see that it all just comes together really quickly. And you'll see with this shading base, because I had a highlight, I left that green. That was intentional, I promise. Alright, so this next part is pretty straightforward. I'm just going to go in with a huge flood fill of what all the colors are supposed to be. If I miss small chunks of the coloring, then this is where I can go ahead and fix them. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward from here. You just color everything in. So now that I have the base coloring for everything in, this is actually going to be the fun part, because now we can actually add in some color gradients. So an easy way to do this is with all of the shading that I just did. I'm actually going to select it and merge it all down. So I'm going to have that normal color base, and then I'm going to have the shading base, which has, like it says, all of the shading on it. I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer, and I'm going to press Control Alt G. And what that'll do is it'll actually clip the layers together. You'll be able to tell that they're clipped because of this little red bar right here. Now, when that's clipped, if I go ahead and go to these filters and I go to overlay, I'm actually going to be able to add some accent colors. I'm switching over to the airbrush over here for subtlety, and I'm just going to go ahead and make a big brush over here, and I'm just going to add some accents to the shading. And that'll just help it feel a little less flat. You'll see that this is only affecting the actual shading portion of it because that's all on one layer. And the good news about that is you can just accent everything however the heck you want, and it just makes a nice little variety to what you're doing. And you'll see just with that there's a pretty big difference with the filters. And if you actually want to add one with the normal base of the coloring as well, you can. And I'm just going to go over here and go to overlay again, or you can use multiply, or pretty much whatever the heck you want to go for. Now you can just add filters as you feel the story needs them. Just make sure to not get too crazy with it. But you'll see that we went from a basic guideline like this to a colored image like this. Alright, so that is basically it. I know I'm not perfect at explaining everything, so if you guys still have questions, then let me know in the comments. This is kind of a tutorial designed for people who already have a basic understanding of layers, so hopefully I didn't lose you in the process. If you have any questions, just let me know. And if you're interested in reading the story, then I will also link this in the description. This is actually a character named Mark from the series called NEFFIE that I'm currently working on. It's available to read for free. I'll link that in the description. And if you want to catch up with some of the live streams that I do, where I usually explain this crud 100 times over and swear that one day I'll make a video about it, then I'll also link my Twitch too. But if you found this video helpful, you know, give it a like, share it with a friend, throw it at somebody. I don't know, do what you're gonna do. But yeah, I hope this was helpful. If you have questions, let me know, and I will see you guys later. Bye.